Hey guys, welcome back to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I am stoked, Pavel. We got an exciting scheduled show today.
Yeah, we do. What do we have? Who are we bringing on tonight?
Well, in just a moment, I'm going to introduce our guests, but there's a couple things I just want to mention first. So I just want to mention every Wednesday right here, guys, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, catch us live. Throw your questions out. In just a moment, you're going to be asking our guest questions, and you can also find us on the Sports Empire Network, thanks to the boys we're partnering with this year. So, yes, we are excited today. I want to welcome today, he's a sports journalist, and he's a writer. He works with Flyers Nitty Gritty. He is an incredible guest because he's got all the answers to the woes of the Philadelphia Flyers. Guys, welcome back again today, Jamey Baskow.
Hey, what's going on? I'm ready to rip my shirt off, man. What an introduction. Holy moly. I'm ready to run through walls. Training camps tomorrow. You just got me pumped up, man.
Just don't get injured. Philly's got quite a few injuries but we don't want to get into. But Jamey, before we begin, how are you doing? How are things in Philly?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. Things in Philly are kind of bleak right now. I mean, you know, like you were talking about injuries and stuff when you're looking at it, and on paper, it's like, how will the Flyers be? They're definitely in the Connor Bedard, race here. But it's just one thing after another. It just feels like the season is gone before it even started. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I don't want to take away from the podcast. But yeah, it's kind of bleak. But I'm ready to run through a wall. Training camps tomorrow. This is the greatest time of year. I don't care about on the surface. I don't care about the team right now. I'm just so freaking stoked that hockey's back.
It's like we're gonna go all Hulk Hogan on the Flyers here, man. Okay, so let's talk about this. We talk about Hulk Hogan. We talk about controversy. Well, let's talk about a little bit of controversy. Let's start this off with, as you talked about it. Tomorrow, training camp gets going. You're going to be able to get your interviews and stuff in. Yep. Let's talk about Couturier, the back injury. This is going to sting. Where are they going to go from here? Now, it looks like they got, and correct me if I'm wrong, they got Hayes, Frost, Brown, maybe Anisimov down the middle. Is there going to be anyone to replace Sean here? Is there what are the question marks around this?
I'm going to be honest. You can't replace Sean Couturier. Sean Couturier is an underrated player, in my opinion, when healthy. He doesn't get much hockey talk, as much talk as he should. He's a phenomenal player. He's on the line. He's at the same level as Patrice Bergeron, and those players don't come around very often. They just go out there. They're the first ones on the ice, last ones off, every single practice. I mean, not just one practice. This is every single practice. I'm going to be honest. He's irreplaceable. Now, what the Flyers can do. I think they're going to get spicy. I think that the lines were going to be jumbled anyway. I think what people had written, this is why I haven't, if you follow my content, this is why I haven't wrote on lines or pairings, because I think that what we believe will be the pairings won't be. What we thought would be the lines wouldn't be. Torts is going to come in here, and he's going to light a fire underneath these guys' butts. And what's going to happen is he's going to put forth the best 4 lines possible that gives him the best opportunity of winning. So just because we see some 4th line grinders, they may play 3rd line, in his opinion. They're better suited for the 3rd line. Maybe he thinks that they can get more production on the 3rd line. The top 6, maybe some of those top 6 players go down to the 3rd or 4th lines. I think he's going to do whatever he thinks is necessary. And this is what leads me to this. Don't forget Noah Cates. If Noah Cates makes his team, he can play down the middle. He did for the University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs, and he is excellent at faceoffs. And what I've seen from the Flyers for the past month through training and stuff, I've seen clips and videos. They're working heavily on faceoffs. Now, I don't know if that was a point of emphasis given with talks because Tortorella talked to every player that to include Phantoms players.
Yeah.
He wanted to get to know some of these guys. And I don't know if he said, hey, face-offs, you get extra zone time, which also helps for the power play as well. Also, winning key draws for penalty kill. So face-offs have a point of emphasis in every team. You're figuring the Flyers have struggled on the power play and the PK, especially last year. And the loss of Sean Couturier definitely affects both units because he's excellent at both. But what happens is you lose that face-off. That's 20 seconds less. Now you might be able to enter the zone with 1:35 left on the power play time, or you win that first penalty kill draw. You're shedding off possibly up to 30 seconds of power play time for the opposition. So I mean, face-offs are definitely a point of emphasis. So, but I'm going to be looking down the middle. I think that's weak. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, so I know we could go on to, the whole Couturier. Let's come back to that in a minute. I want to mention this. So Aaron's asking here, he says, how do you think Torts will impact the team with his comments about the room training camp before training camp even began?
I think those comments were to light a fire for people, to make them aware that he knows that there may have been something going on in that locker room. I don't think he exactly knows. This is my personal opinion. I don't think he exactly knows without stepping into that locker room how bad it was or what exactly was the problem. Firmly believe that he put the players on notice saying, hey, get your freaking acts together. We're going to put this team together here. We're going to be glue. We're going to live with each other on the ice. We're going to live with each other off the ice. We're going to spend a ton of time with each other, get to know each other. Whatever happened in the past. You leave it in the past. And this starts now. I want a clean house. I want a fresh slate. Everybody gets a clean slate. And if you're looking, I don't recall the amount of players that the Flyers have brought to training camp in a long time. Since I've been covering this team for 8 years, I do not recall 71 players invited to camp. So This is something new that I personally haven't seen. Now, Bill Meltzer said that he has seen some higher numbers in the past, but I personally have never seen 71 being invited to camp. And I think that's because he's going to select the best players that suits his needs. He's going to select at least the top 21 players that gives him the best opportunity to win. And he does not care who they will be. He will select who they will be. So if Zach McEwen, who I like and gives his energy, if he firmly believes that Tyson Forrester gives him a better opportunity to win, he's going to take Tyson Forrester over Zach McEwen. If he believes that, Nick Delorier can see the bench, he's going to the bench. If he thinks that Noah Cates or Tanner Ledzinski gives them that both of those two young players give them a better opportunity to win over Patrick Brown, Patrick Brown's going to the bench or being waived. That's what's going to happen. I firmly believe I'm going to see a lot of waivers this is going to be a very busy training camp for journalists because we're going to be doing a lot of writing. I'm telling you, this guy is a phenomenal coach. I love everything he's putting down, especially with his comments today. He really hits home with the fans. He said to the season ticket holders in this Inside Edge, and it was tweeted by Dan Silver in the Philadelphia Flyers because they're season ticket holders. What John Tortorella said, I can't guarantee you wins, but what I will say is that this team will come to play every single night, and if they don't, they're hitting the bench.
That's fair. And I mean, you've made some good points. Oh,
I gotta interrupt you, Pavel. I just want to put this up here, man. One of our comments. So Mark, man, hey, he's a longtime fan of me. I just got to promote myself. Thank you so much. Okay, Pavel, ask your question away.
I didn't realize this is Evan and hockey talk. I thought we're two guys, but anyways. So Jamey, you talked a little bit about, some of the reporting because there's going to be a lot of change. Definitely, curious to see who comes out of the training camp. The one thing that I don't think is being reported that I've read upon is I know that there's a lot of dynamics between Tony DeAngelo being brought in for that 2-year contract, which you can maybe allude to a little bit. But the dynamic between Tortorella kind of lighting that fire and his relationship even with Cam Atkinson and what he brought, because they played together in Columbus. And what I remember from that Columbus team is even though they may have struggled to get into the playoffs, they were playing meaningful games in February, March. There was a dynamic change, and some of the players like Cam kind of tuned out Tortorella because it's a grind to play. So what are your thoughts on Tortorella's coaching style? Does it match what Philly is looking for, especially since you mentioned Zach McEwen, Nick Delorier being brought in, some of these almost like old school Broadstreet bullies to some extent. I know it's not the same. But your thoughts on his coaching style and how that's going to impact it. And also on the back end, what does Philly have to do losing Ellis again? Will he play?
Well, I think Tortorella hits home with the fans for sure. When you hear that it's been written by many people, and I've personally seen it, where certain players take shifts off or they just look lethargic and it looks like they're taking a shift off the entire line, but they might not be taking a shift off. This is what was happening with the Flyers for the past 2 seasons. When they allow one goal, things just seem to unravel and they just seem disinterested. You've seen it. The world has seen it. Flyer fans are very passionate and know the team. When they're watching, they know when players are given half-ass. You've seen it with Jimmy Rollins, and they've called out Jimmy Rollins. They've called out stars. Like fans, the Philadelphia fan base does not have any bias towards star players or any player for that matter. So they're going to have to give 100% effort, and that's what is going to instill into these players. If they don't want to do it, this is a tough style. It's a tough coaching style, and I think that's why a lot of teams may have not gone after Tortorella, because these guys are being paid millions of dollars. So now they're at the point to where I've made my money. I don't have to give what this coach is doing. He won't bench me. Let's see if he does. But it's been known in the past. He's had a rocky relationship with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think that's well known, right? With Patrick Laine, not afraid to bench him. And I'm not saying those relationships are rocky. What I mean is, I think that's a little strong on my behalf. What I mean is that he commands full effort. And you don't want to give an effort? Okay. I don't care how much freaking talent you have. It's like Herb Brooks. You don't need all the talent in the world to win a hockey game or win a tournament. You just need the best team glue piece that will give you the best opportunity to win. And I think that's the coaching style that Tortorella will bring. Because I think he knows deep down, look, on paper, we're not the most talented team. They are not. When you're with minus Sean Couturier, and you mentioned a minus of Ryan Ellis, those are 2 heavy pieces there of the Flyers. I don't care what anybody says. Ryan Ellis means a lot to this team. And when Ryan Ellis is out, the Flyers free fall. You saw it last year, right? When he's in the lineup, see the first 4 games, I think they were 3-1 in their first 4 games. And he had 4 points, 5 points, 1 goal, 4 assists. I mean, he really made an impact. He's a big loss, regardless of how people try to spin this. He's a loss. And no one knows what's going to happen. He had physicals today. He had testing. He was in Voorhees last week. That's why I tweeted that out. He definitely was there. what he was doing there, I'm not so sure. Everything's speculative right now until I get more information tomorrow. The problem is that we haven't been able to go into the locker rooms for the past 2 years. So you mentioned Tony D'Angelo. No one knows how his character is. We can only see from interviews how his character is because his character wasn't known in Carolina. Again, we weren't allowed into locker rooms. And during the pandemic, you weren't allowed in the locker rooms either in 2020. So for those 2 years, he's sort of on a clean slate because no one knows if there was a character problem in the locker room because a lot of players aren't going to reveal if there is a cancer in the locker room. They're going to keep it to themselves more often than not. Sometimes you might get a leak here, you might get a leak there, but I personally haven't heard any character problems from Tony D'Angelo for the past 2 years. Now, has he been in the past? Sure. I mean, you're seeing the fight, with the New York Rangers and Georgiev. There's stuff in juniors that he said that, was horrible. And, that will stick with you. I'm looking for the word. It begins with a T. It's something that's going to hinder him for the rest of his career because that's going to be in the back of people's minds. They won't forget some of the things that he said, the hateful stuff. And it was very hateful. Now, he regrets it. He said that to Philly media when he was introduced to the team and stuff. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to be forgiven. That's just the way the world is. But in terms of his character for the past 2 years, no one really knows. We weren't allowed in the locker rooms. This year, per the NHL, we're allowed in the locker rooms. Now, the Flyers aren't allowing media or staff members alike in the locker rooms until the very first practice, not training camp. Training camp's excluded. The very first scheduled practice is when Philly media is allowed back into the locker rooms, and then after the games. So this year, we will be able to have a better understanding of Tony D'Angelo's character if he was a cancer in the locker room, if he isn't. A 2-year deal was given because of the uncertainty to Ryan Ellis. I think that right there showed you that there was some uncertainty to Ryan Ellis. Now, what got me is that Chuck Fletcher banked on a healthy Ryan Ellis, so to speak, up until he found out in July, and then he was like, okay, I need to go after Tony D'Angelo, like do one of those panic things. And so I thought Sean Couturier was going to be 100% healthy. But Sean Couturier spoke last week. He said he was healthy. He said he also said that he had a setback in the summer. So to me, if I was Chuck Fletcher, I would have tried to seal the deal then because of uncertainty. When you're announcing that when a number one center, and there's no doubt in my mind that the Flyers knew that he had some sort of setback. If that wasn't if the organization weren't notified about that, there is something wrong inside this organization, and mightily more than what we even know or think or can believe. Because when your top guy on paper was Sean Couturier, and he's telling you, I had a setback. I don't, I have to go see. To me, that sparks, okay, I'm going after Johnny Gaudreau then, or something of that nature. And this throws the fan base off. And that's the disconnect between the Flyers and their fan base, because now they're seen as not being honest. And that's what Flyers fans want, is honesty. They want courage, and they want passion. And to be honest, they see it as lying to them. And so I don't fault any Flyers fans for bashing the Flyers in that retrospect, because it sort of does seem like they are hiding something or trying to beat around the bush or hoping that he gets better. But what it does is, if the Flyers free fall here this year, they're going to do a full rebuild at some point. They have to. So now you had the retool crowd, and you had the rebuild crowd. Okay? So the Flyers chose the retool crowd and signed Nick Delorier to a 4-year deal and traded for Tony D'Angelo. That was your retool. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, they forewent the rebuild, but now with these injuries, with Sean Couturier being out a length of time they don't know, they're saying 6 to 8 weeks. I heard that he could be out as late as January. That's pretty much half the season right there or more. So like they would know the writing's on the wall then. So now, if the Flyers are free falling at that point, they have lost 1 year of a rebuild. A rebuild can take 4 to 5 years. So now, where the Flyers would have 3 to 4 years left, now they have to start all over that 4 to 5. So they lost a year. So that's why Flyers fans are upset.
Okay, so I know some of our viewers have questions. We're going to get to you guys because Jamey's talking about something I think is really important. We've talked about this on our show right around. We were going through this for the UFA signings. Let's go to Johnny Gaudreau. We know the Flyers have always been his favorite team. Where there's a whole bunch of different mixed signals out there. In the end, do you know, or are you able to share anything? Because what it appears to most of the viewers now is he chose not to go to New Jersey. He had a great offer that was at least coming out that way. That was his home area, but his favorite team was Philly. And I believe his wife is from the Philly area. She was a Philly person. However, it looked like there was no cap cleared by Chuck Fletcher. We'll talk about Chuck in a little bit. This is what it's looking like, and then you can correct or set us straight or give us some idea or maybe some hope to Flyer fans. So it looks like that's what he wanted, and the reason he settled for Columbus is there was some events with his wife and different stuff, and a city that could be very safe to be in, just like in Canada and Calgary and stuff. So that was his backup is what it's looking like. So what I'm wondering is there anything, did they even try?
No, the Flyers made no offer. They didn't even contact him. And that's the problem that Flyers fans have. And that's why I brought him up, is because if Sean Couturier had a setback before free agency began, the Flyers could have worked the cap some way. They could have put Ryan Ellis to LTIR. And they could have, because you're able to go 10% over the cap. They still could have fit him in somehow, Johnny Gaudreau, because you're able to go 10% over and then have to rework it. And they could have put Ryan Ellis to LTIR if they knew he wasn't going to be 100% healthy. With John Tortorella has come out and said he will not be healthy for camp. At the very least, he doesn't know how bad it is or when, but he says he definitely won't be there for the opening day of camp, which is tomorrow. Johnny Gaudreau wanted to come to Philly. I think that, Jersey offered him more money. He took less money with Columbus, mind you. And so he wanted 100% to come to Philadelphia, and they made no offer, didn't even contact his agent at all. And that's what disturbed some Flyers fans, because on the surface, he could have signed anywhere from 9 to 10 million. But if Johnny Gaudreau really wanted to come to Philly, maybe he may have taken a pay cut. Maybe if it suited him and his family, and he put his wife first, like you said, his family was very important to him. He plays in this Checking for Charity tournament every single year, headlined by Tony D'Angelo, because Tony D'Angelo is a big advocate for the community, and he is. He does good. He does do good work for the community. He does a Checking for Charity tournament every single year. Johnny Gaudreau's there every single year with Tony D'Angelo. Joel Farabee's been there every single year. Joel Farabee was again there this year. So these guys go. They play in this Checking for Charity tournament. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be in Philadelphia. He may have signed a pay cut. And I say that because no one knows if he would have. He took a pay cut with Columbus. He could have went to Jersey and took the 10+ million. But no, he didn't. He elected to sign for 8 some with Columbus. Maybe he would have signed for 6.75 with Philly or 7. Who knows? But where I'm getting at is you have to have a starting point somewhere. So maybe Chuck Fletcher could have lowballed him and then met in the middle somewhere and wouldn't have been as high. I mean, it's just things like that rub the fan base the wrong way. If Fletcher would have at least contacted his agent, that would have done wonders for Flyer fans and said, okay, he had some talk. He wanted his X amount. It's understandable why he didn't go after him. But now he didn't even try. You don't even call to even contact his agent to say, hey, I'll offer him, like I said, 6.75 or 7 million. and then meet in the middle at 8.5 or something. Didn't do it. And that's what pisses the fan base off. That leads me to if Sean Couturier was injured or had a setback before free agency began, I want to know, like, that's what I'm going to ask Sean Couturier. And he's a very honest person. And I don't know if he'll answer that, publicly, but I would love to know, like, the exact timeline of his setback, because that to me is a key indication, like, something is wrong. Then I'm not saying Coots can be untrusted, but you have to have a backup plan in this business. And that the Flyers have been down this route so many times. Like, you're looking at Kevin Hayes last year. Yeah. I knew that was happening. I wrote article after article that previous summer. Don't expect anything from Kevin Hayes. That was before his brother passed, right? And because the Flyers had a rich history with hernia surgeries. You're looking at Claude Giroux had a sports hernia surgery. He wasn't healthy again until February. Shane Gostisbehere had the same procedure as Kevin Hayes. Wasn't healthy until February and March. Brian Elliott missed an entire season because of that. But that was the 8 goaltender season, if you can remember. Like, this happened previously. How could they not bank and get another center for Kevin Hayes? You cannot bank on an unhealthy person coming into camp, because it was a shortened off season anyway, because they were just coming out of the pandemic. The season started late. It's just mind-boggling sometimes of the organization, and that's the disconnect between the fans and the organization. And trust me, I love this organization. I write for them, and stuff, and I try to write objectively. And this is me being objective. I just don't understand some of the decisions. I haven't seen this many misfortunes with a franchise that I can recall, where people just keep getting hurt and hurt and hurt. And you can't blame it on the medical staff anymore, because they revamped the medical staff. This offseason. Chuck Fletcher actually did a good job in that area. He saw that there was a problem. He brought in a new director, in Ian McEwen. They came out with 3 new people today that they released. Jim McCrossan is also being retained in a senior advisor role, but they have new athletic trainers. They have new physical therapists. He realized that this was an issue, and this is still going on. So it definitely, probably, maybe it wasn't the medical staff or something. Who knows what it was? Maybe it's just misfortune. But I haven't seen this type of misfortune with the franchise. You're looking, Bobby Brink was hurt seriously. He's out almost the whole year. Joel Farabee, it wasn't good. Like a week after Bobby Brink's injury report, here comes Joel Farabee. Oh, has the same surgery as Jack Eichel in his neck. Oh man, that makes me feel great. And then you're getting the news 3 days before training camp opens that Sean Couturier might be out. Who knows how long he's going to be out? I'm like, oh man, I just see 2021 unraveling in the training camp hasn't even started.
I would love to see somebody out there take stats, because I am sure in the last 2 decades, last 20 years, the Flyers have the most man games lost to injury out of all the teams. Wow. I mean, it has been insane. You're right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you brought up some good points about Chuck Fletcher, which we'll kind of allude back to, and whether or not he's on the hot seat. But one of the stories that came out this past summer, I believe it was early on after the season had ended for the Flyers and the playoffs are happening, is that there was a bit of a disconnect, as you mentioned, for who to draft in that draft, where it was Nico Hischier, Nolan Patrick at second, Miro Heiskanen, I believe, went third, and Cale Makar wanted first. And I think there was some radio interview, or there was some internal thing, and some people wanted Makar, and nobody knew what Makar would become. The dynamic defenseman it is, but Nico Hischier is doing solid in New Jersey. Nolan Patrick, as you alluded to earlier, injury has really plagued him. But what do you do with an organization where where there's a bit of mistrust and the wins aren't coming? Because when wins come, for any team, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, the fans are happy because their team is winning and they're competitive. And there's 2 seasons, as they like to say. There's the regular season, and then there's the playoff season. So what are your thoughts? Will Chuck Fletcher be on the hot seat? Will it be early? And what can the Flyers do, including Tortorella and Fletcher and the organization, to better that relationship and rapport with the fans in the city?
I think deep down, when you're looking at it, this is so tough in terms of redrafts. And this is why I'm not a fan of redrafts. To be honest, the consensus, I'm okay with the Nolan Patrick pick. And that's, and I know there were, some scouts that said, hey, take this guy. You're always going to have a scout or two that have their guys, because they watch them and they do a great job. Scouts do a great job. They have a hard job. They have a hard job at weeding out who should go where and why, or who should be picked, where, or should we pick them at all? And some of the players look the same. So how do they separate, these players on their pedestal here? Where are the boxes do they check? Where do some players miss? I'm okay with the Nolan Patrick pick because that the consensus was it was either going to be Nico Hischier 1 or Nolan Patrick 1, and then Hischier would follow the Flyers. Or was it going to be Patrick, or was it going to be Hischier 1 and then Patrick follows the Flyers? So I'm okay with that. If they would have went and drafted off board, and let's just say they took Iskanen or Makar with that pick, they would have gotten apples thrown at them. They would have gotten booed at them. No one could sit here and tell me that they wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at Donovan McNabb with the Eagles. He was selected, from Syracuse. People were pissed. Philadelphia was mad. They were pissed off that they selected Donovan McNabb. And look, he was one of the best quarterbacks to ever suit up for that organization. So they were mad at that pick too. And that's what I mean. So when you're going back and you're looking at redrafts, yeah, it does suck when you see that the injury, unfortunate. Nolan Patrick's one of the most talented people you're not scoring goals between your legs, and he's done it on multiple occasions. He did it with the Flyers, and he did it with Vegas. You're not scoring between your legs because you're not talented. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that's what sucks. But in terms of Chuck Fletcher being on the hot seat, absolutely he is. He is feeling the pressure, and I guarantee that that's the chair is warm. Honestly, it's probably steaming. And what I was shocked at, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to come clean with this because I've said it on some phone conversation. I never said you're the first podcast I'm going to say this on. Is I was shocked that he wasn't dismissed with Alain Vigneault because the Flyers did that with Hextall and Dave Haxtell and left.
That's right. They
fired Alain Vigneault and kept Chuck Fletcher. And I wondered, and that I went through it, and I don't know if that's because, with whomever is calling the shots, maybe it's not Chuck Fletcher. So maybe he's not calling all the shots. Maybe he's calling a lot of them, but maybe he's not calling all of them. And that's the speculation, and that's why people speculate. Why, to me, a coach and a GM go hand in hand a lot of times. So if you see your guy, and that was his guy, he let him pick his players. Yeah. Alain Vigneault was able to pick his team, and he did that. He moved in from being one of the youngest teams to one of the oldest teams in a year, or not oldest, but the middle grade. I think last year the average age was 28.9, I think, and so he went from being 25 some, I think it was 25.1 the prior year, to 28.9 in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, but that's a lot. And so he was able to pick his players. So to me, they went hand in hand. So I was kind of shocked he wasn't dismissed. Now, Chuck Fletcher coming in, yes, the seat is warm, and it's warm because you've had opportunities. You've had players that came clean that wanted to come to Philly, but did nothing to make it happen. And now you're looking at Sean Couturier being hurt again, and missing a significant portion. Well, whose fault is that? Who does that get the bearing of? That gets the bearing of Chuck Fletcher because of what I mentioned. He had a setback.
Yeah.
In the summer. Why didn't the Flyers be proactive with all these unfortunate mishaps with injuries and be proactive and try to maybe not get a number one center, but a second line center at the very least, like they did with Kevin Hayes?
Well, I've seen I was going to say that I saw some talk on Twitter. One of the things that the tweets was really interesting because they could have paid a little bit more. Could they have picked up if they had any idea? Maybe even someone like Dylan Strome to come in as your 3C,
Yes.
and then maybe fill in, right? Or something along that line. But I was going to say that. Go ahead.
That is an awesome point about Dylan Strome. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that needs to be said because you know what? That's exactly the player that I was targeting with the RFAs, and stuff like that. Well, will they make a play for Dylan Strome? Because even with a healthy Sean Couturier, I'm going to be honest, I don't think Kevin Hayes is a second line center. I've always seen him as a third line center. So could Dylan Strome possibly move up to 2C or what? Or vice versa? Or could he push Kevin Hayes? So I thought that, going after Dylan Strome would have been a perfect scenario because I thought the Flyers were weak down the middle to begin with. You have an unreliable Morgan Frost, and I say unreliable. He's talented for days. The guy is very talented, but he hasn't been able to put it together yet, and I'm hoping he will this year. But that's it. It's hope. It's not defined. So, do you want an undefined product coming into a big year, or do you want a defined product coming into a big year? I think that Morgan Frost is going to have a good year. I think he's very talented, and I like him. So I think he's going to do well, but I could understand the undefined part.
So interesting, back-to-back weeks. Last week, play-by-play NHL broadcaster Leah Hextall told us last week her boy Brad, not Brad. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I brought Brad McCrimmon up. But Kelly McCrimmon being on the hot seat in Vegas this year with all his moves and his cap space. 2 weeks in a row, we're talking about hot seats here for general managers, and that's really scary.
Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating with Kelly McCrimmon. I mean, they've done a really good job in Vegas. I'm surprised they missed the playoffs last year, but they have a full, healthy Jack Eichel now, and that's it's the most underrated part. And yes, we could say that the goaltending position, but Vegas is one of those they just get production. It's like the Pittsburgh Penguins. Every time the Penguins have an injury or multiple injuries or half the team is out to include Sidney Crosby and Malkin, they just plug people in and they just work. I see the same happening with Vegas, on paper. I just see a very talented team there. Something has to be going on if it doesn't work inside the locker room that we don't know about. Because there is no reason, even with Robin Lehner, being, not playing and stuff, something has to be going on there.
So
hey,
okay, we got a question.
Yeah, let's get to one of our. So we want to get to some of you viewers out there. I know you guys ask questions. We got a ton of them, and I know we're not going to get through it on this show. The question here from Key is, how do you think Carter Hart? And I'm just thinking because you were talking about Robin Lehner.
Yeah.
We know the team around him this year. How do you think he's going to fare in net this year?
I actually wrote an article. It's funny this person brought this up. Great question, by the way. You really do get some good questions on here, but I think that Carter Hart had the most pressure headed, on his shoulders heading into this season, and that was before the Sean Couturier injury announcement and stuff. And I just thought he had tons of pressure, and the reason is because I think that the Flyers are going to have to rely heavily on a Carter Hart. Unfortunately, you're looking at an unknown at the backup position, and to me, when that situation happens, it's not a good one. I mean, you're looking at a Troy Grosnick, Felix Sandstrom, Samuel Urson, Pat Nagel battling, and Noah Meyer battling for a spot, and Tyler Wall, who was a PTO as well, battling for one position, the backup role, and that's not good. And you're looking at the history of Flyers goaltending, not good at all, because look how long it's taken for the Flyers to actually get a franchise netminder since Reagan was freaking in office, so that's, but Carter Hart, I think, is going to play well. Now, to me, what is that? Don't look at his stats because I think they might be inflated, and I say that because I think the defense overall has improved. I actually like if the Flyers went with Ivan Provorov, Tony DeAngelo, Travis Sanheim, Rasmus Ristolainen, and you got work and I forget. I forget. Nick Steelers is 7th, and then you had you could possibly have Ronnie Attard or something, as the the bottom pairing there. But like
Cam York or Justin Braun?
Justin Braun, that's it. That's
Braun.
exactly it. Justin Braun. I forgot about Justin Braun. So it'd be Cam York, Justin Braun. But I think Attard is going to push. I just think some of these young guys push some of these vets. But again, that's why I think that Torts is going to take the best team. But even still, let's say those top 6 players that you just mentioned, that I mentioned in Justin Braun. I think that the defense has improved, but has the 5-man unit improved? So that means the forward back check enough to help the D out. It's not only a 2-man D, it's a 5-man. And that's what has hindered the Flyers in the past, is that the forwards haven't supported the defensemen enough for puck support to ease into transition, to exit for exits into the neutral zone, for zone exits. It just hasn't happened. Will this happen this year? I don't know. But I think overall, Carter Hart is a very talented netminder. I think he's going to do well. Where I'm getting at is that there were some people last year that said Carter Hart didn't play well at all. And actually there was a major reporter that said that Carter Hart hasn't played well. And unfortunately, I don't like to call people out very often, but I had to call him, because if you watch the games, you can see Carter Hart playing well. Just because his stats don't say it's like a 2.20 GAA and a .930, .94 save percentage doesn't mean he's not playing well. I mean, I'm sorry, but the 5 in front just didn't play well at all. I don't care who the hell was in that. They could have had Martin Brodeur back in his prime. The same results would have happened. I mean, it's just horrible when you like the hate that Carter Hart got last year. I think was unfair, and that's why when he's coming into this year, there's so much pressure on him, and I think it's unfair that he gets all this pressure. He's 24 years old, and he's got pressure for days on him, and the 5-man unit has to go out there and battle in front of him. Will they battle? I think they will, because of John Tortorella, but that's yet to be known. Because just because I think they will doesn't mean they will. And if they don't, it's going to be a long darn season for the Orange and Black, and a long darn season for Carter Hart, whoever his backup is. And I feel bad for both. That's why I think Carter Hart is getting a bad rep from the national media. I think that he doesn't get enough rep from the city of Philadelphia. I think he deserves more credit for what he has done, from what the cards he's been dealt with. We could say forwards and defensemen help. What are you supposed to do? I mean, you could have. I'm telling you, you could have Martin Brodeur. You could have Bernie Perrant. Back healthy 100%. And I tell you that GAA would have been over 3 this past season for sure. I mean, it didn't matter who was in between the pipes. The same results were going to occur.
Wow.
And goaltending wasn't a problem last year for the Flyers. Even Martin Jones played well. Both Carter Hart and Martin Jones had their struggles. I'm not going to lie. They had their struggles. They had their bad games. But more often than not, they gave the team a chance to win.
Exactly.
They kept them in as long as they could before they were pelted with 50 and 60 freaking shots a night. I think the season high, I think there was like 61 shots on that. What's Carter Hart supposed to do?
Apparently stop them all.
I mean, it's just like, but it was mind-boggling. I couldn't even believe that somebody. I forget who the person was, and I'm happy I do, because I didn't like to call people out and stuff. But that was a horrible tweet. It was a horrible tweet.
And I call Evan out all the time when he's wrong, because he knows nothing about it. So it's fine. You did it to an official reporter. I do it to Evan. It's the same.
I've made some bad tweets, man. I've had some bad ones, but not like that. That one was like, whoa, dude. That was just like,
we want to talk positives, because so we don't want to make every Flyer fan or people in the area all doom and gloom. The rookie tournaments have just been happening. And I know that there's been some discussion about some of the prospects coming in for the game. Have you been able to watch some of the games? And who should people who are watching, not only Flyers fans, but people who love the game of hockey, be keeping an eye on when their team faces off versus the Flyers in the future, in the coming 2-3 years? What are some prospects?
There's two in particular that pop in my head right away: Tyson Forrester and Elliot Desnoyers. And the reason I say that, Elliot Desnoyers may not be that flashy guy getting goals, putting points up, but he plays the right way, and he produces. He may not produce at the rate that some fans would like or whatever. He ended the rookie games with 3 assists, but this guy was. You could tell he was confidence was through the roof. He put together a really good 2 rookie games. I thought he needed that because after a bad WJC where he didn't get much ice time and stuff. In Canada, mind you, Canada was a very well-stocked team. They always are. So it's hard to get ice time for Team Canada. It's hard to blame coaches for Canada to disperse ice time when the team is so good and you got so many talented players. And you're trying to divvy up ice time for everybody and trying to keep it as fair as possible. But they want to win a gold as well. So it's kind of hard to ridicule the coaches there to why Desnoyers didn't get much ice time. But it's just players are talented. That's all that was. And Tyson Forrester was one of them. He earned his ice time. The kid has had a bad knack for his skating, but I'm telling you, watch those rookie games and see his skating. His skating has improved vastly. And you're looking at the WJC. The problem with Tyson Forrester is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
He is a good skater when he's confident. He is a bad skater when he's not. And that to me is the biggest thing. His first shoot mentality is something that the Flyers need ASAP. And they need a shooter. They need one that can pick their spots and score. The Flyers lack goal scoring. Tyson Forrester can produce. He is a first shot mentality. He'll shoot from the other side of ice if he has to. At least he'll get the puck on net. He hits the net 9 times out of 10. And that's something that lacks on the squad right now. And that's why I think he can make a big push for this team. I think Elliot Desnoyers makes a push, but eventually goes to Lehigh, because I think that Tyson Forrester is more experienced than Elliot Desnoyers at the professional level. And he is, because he was fortunate to be during the pandemic years to where he could choose if he wanted to go to juniors or the AHL. He chose the AHL. Because remember, some junior teams weren't playing. And then when they restarted, they were able to stay with their teams if they chose to, or if the teams chose to, if they were on the same page. And the Phantoms elected to keep Tyson Forrester on their squad. So he had a full AHL season, and then he had that injury-riddled season last year with Lehigh, and then goes to Barrie and killed it. And so I think that year of AHL experience, he had time to live as a pro and learn the game as a pro. And now we're seeing him fine-tuning it. And that's why I think I will go on record right now. Tyson Forrester makes this team. And I just see it. Somebody's going to be out. I don't know who's going to be. But Tyson Forrester is going to make this team. I'm so high on Forrester. I think he's one of the best prospects that the Flyers have, because it's something that they lack. They need a goal scorer. They need that guy who's not afraid to shoot, who doesn't hesitate to shoot. We've seen in the past where players, and it's okay. They see an opening. No, let me go with the safety net, and decide to elect not to shoot or pass. Tyson Forrester is rifling the shot. He doesn't care. He'll slap it. He'll wrist it. He's got a hell of a snapshot. He's got a nasty snapshot. But one player that I didn't talk about, there's 2 players. I'm very high on Ethan Sampson, who's a right-handed defenseman that will not make a push, but he plays for the Prince George Cougars. I'm telling you, this kid, he looks good. He looks good. I'm not saying he's the real deal or anything, but he looks good. And I'm hoping that he earns a contract before he heads back to the Prince George Cougars, because he can. He needs an ELC at the end of next year in 2023. So it's not like he needs an ELC right now, but I think he can make a push to earn an ELC before he leaves camp. That's how high I've been with him. And the Flyers lack a right-handed defenseman in the system. They have Wyatt Wiley, who's played well, who had a good rookie camp as well. But another guy that I'm high on is Samuel Ersson. And the Flyers fans want to hear this, because I think he's going to make a push for the backup role. Do I think he wins it? I'm not so sure. But he's going to make a push. And that rookie game that he played in, where they won 5-1. They solely won because of Samuel Erson. He stopped 36 out of 37 shots faced. I mean, to the Flyers, 20 shots I think they had on net in that second rookie game. So I think that he needed that because he had that injury-riddled season last year, and he needed that game for confidence. And again, he's like a player like Tyson Forrester. He plays better with confidence. I think a lot of players do, but it's just very ironic for getting back to Tyson Forrester that his skating improves as he's confident, and when he's not confident, you can see his skating. He's very sluggish, like he was for the first few WJC games.
Yeah,
if you watch those first few WJC games, he didn't play up to the Tyson Forrester that we saw, but he's been training in Voorhees, New Jersey since June. He never left. So he stayed up there, training at the Flyers facility, getting to know the dietitians, getting to know the nutritionists, getting to know the athletic training staff, getting to know the physical therapists, getting to know Slava, the skate coach. Skate. He knew what he had to work on, and he did it.
Wow. So you're talking about prospects here. We're actually getting ready to wrap up the show. We have a top five, everybody. We have a top five Flyers of all time. Jamey has put it in his top five. We're going to share that in just a minute. One last question, though, before we go into this. Let's take a moment. Now, we're going to be actually bringing Carl Manson from Hockey News SE over in Sweden. We're going to be bringing him on, but we're still 4 weeks away. He's going to be updating a lot more on, I believe you say Fedotov. That's your big goalie?
Yeah, I'm Fedotov,
I saw you guys just tweeted out some more stuff today. Can you update people? I believe he's a 6'8" goalie, too.
Yeah, he's 6'8", and unfortunately, what happened with Ivan Fedotov, he has talent for days. The Flyers signed him. His contract has been frozen. He elected not to go to trial for his military service, so he's going to serve a year in the military. I know it's sad news. At this time, in terms of Ivan Fedotov, his safety and his family are more important than the sport of hockey. Some things are more important, especially when might not be his choice. He might be forced into this. Now, I'm not saying he was, because I don't know all the parameters, and stuff, and I don't want to speak negatively of, the nation of Russia, but it's a sad situation. I just pray for him and his family. I think that there's sometimes stuff more to sports, stuff more than the sport that he plays for. He loves the sport of hockey. I know it. I've talked to him at developmental camp, the one developmental camp that he was at. And it's really unfortunate, this situation. But in the same token, I think prayers need to be with him and his family. But in terms of his contract's frozen, he will not play for the Flyers this year. He will have to serve a year in the military. And I think Carl Manson is a hell of a guest. Congratulations on that.
Well, it's because of guys like you're just helping us. So very interesting enough. So I believe now, does Sam work with you guys?
Sam Carchidi?
No, Sam Wismer.
Wismer? Oh, yes. Yeah. She
just tweeted out today that he had dropped his lawsuit yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a court date on the 20th. Yeah. And he went to court because he was trying to get out of serving the year in military. He decided not to fight it, dropped it, and now he will serve a year in the military. Yeah, she is correct, 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know I was talking to Carl earlier today, because Putin had a message out there today about this is the sad part. Well, we talk about hockey, lives are at stake, and people's. It's just shattering.
Absolutely.
Like you said, as I was talking to Carl, I was just reminded back if we remember, we always joked about, when the war happened and they did the Tom Hanks movie, A League of Their Own. It's just the whole sports thing. And I know Carl has a very different take on the KHL, how he feels about it and stuff. Even the Canadian players signing over there. I believe 45 Canadian players have already signed this year over in the KHL. Which is interesting when it comes to making a living, right? So, okay, well, let's move over. So let's get ready and post. I'll let you interact, and Pavel's going to maybe question you on a few of these things here.
Okay.
Okay, so guys, let's go ahead and add to our stream. Here we go. The top 5 Philadelphia Flyers all time. This is Jamey Baskow's list. Tell us why.
Boo! First off, that list sucks. Let's get that out of the way, right? No, why? Bobby Clark is obviously the best player to ever play for this organization. But the second best player to ever play for this organization has been Claude Giroux. He's top 1 or 2 in every single scoring category that the Flyers, maintain. Bernie Parent, one of the best goaltenders to ever play, suit up for the Philadelphia Flyers. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I had Bill Barber because I thought he was one of the best wingers to ever play for the organization. So I tried to put like one in every category. Actually, I should have put Mark Howe somewhere in there, or tried anyway to have to fill each position, goaltending. But I know I left off one hell of a netminder in Ron Hextall, and it was hard because I'm going to be honest. Eric Lindros had to stay at 5 for me. I think that if this guy was able to stay healthy, and we talked about it before the broadcast, I'm telling this guy could have broken records. I'm not saying he would have broken Gretzky records, but I don't think the NHL will ever see a player like Eric Lindros again that had the physical. He could be physical, had the scoring prowess. He could score at will and freaking hit, stick up for his teammates, and pass like unbelievable, and make players, every single player that played on his line, better. I mean, look, John LeClaire was being hammered, in Montreal and stuff, comes to Philly and kills it. I just say, man, see, there you go. Lindros should have been top. I just don't think the NHL will see another player like Eric Lindros, and they haven't seen a player like him. You're looking at Connor McDavid's, Leon Draisaitl's. They're very great players. They are great players. Don't get me wrong. They're more finesse players. They're not at Lindros level to where they can freaking just hammer. I mean, when I say hammer, ram on the board, and the boards in today's game is safer than it was, a few years ago. Years ago when Lindros played. Imagine if he played now. Imagine if Eric Lindros played now.
Ooh,
wow!
Oh my God, he might be able to play. He might be a Jaromir Jagr with the way the league has set themselves up. In terms of safety, I think they've gotten better in terms of the safety aspect. Yeah. I think players, they don't fight as much. They aren't as they aren't. The sport is still physical, but maybe not as physical as it was, say, 10 years ago. I mean, but you're still seeing it, in playoffs. Playoff hockey is different from the regular season hockey. I think it's a whole brand, different, more physical and stuff. Now, that style of hockey was reminiscent of 10 years ago. Wow. But like regular season aspect, Lindros could have killed it. I mean, man, I'm telling you, like, Lindros was a phenomenal player.
It sounds like Lindros should have been higher up on your list.
He should have, but it's hard to because he didn't play as much, and because of his injury history, I had to peg him down, or else I would have had him ahead of possibly Bill Barber. I'll stop there. But Claude Giroux is the most underrated player to ever suit up for this organization. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, if Claude Giroux was in any other city, they'd have a building named after him. That's how good this freaking dude was. They'd have at least a street named after him. I mean, you're looking. Sean Couturier has a street named after him in Quebec. It's called Couturier Lane or something of that nature. He was given that, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And Claude Giroux doesn't have that. Claude Giroux should have Claude Giroux Fargo Center. I mean, that's how good this guy was. He was phenomenal.
I mean, there's still time. There's still time, for Rhodes to be made. His name to be on there and for him to be honored. The one thing that I will push back on is I really believe that. I know we talked a little bit about it before the show. Is on my list, John LeClaire would have made it in top 5. I know some people are big fans. Mark Recchi is the name that comes up again.
Yep.
And Mark Kerr, I believe, if I recall.
Tim Kerr, man.
Tim Kerr.
The undrafted Tim Kerr.
Undrafted. He
Tim
was
Kerr.
a solid
Yeah.
player. When I was getting into
Undrafted.
hockey, I watched a lot of his videos. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, you guys have had a plethora of players who have gone through the organization and some big names that have, made an impact for Philly. So there's no denying that Philly is one of the best hockey markets out there.
I'm going to take flack for pegging Bernie Parent down one peg to 3 as opposed to keeping him at 2. Because I know, the Flyers fan base is so passionate. All they want to do is win, and I think most fan bases do. But this they're ready, and they don't see the cup. They don't have a shot at the cup. It feels like whatever. But I'm going to tell this. I'm going to tell you this. Bernie Parent won a Stanley Cup. So in Flyers fan base eyes, that would reign supreme over Claude Giroux, who hasn't won a cup. Yeah. So it's kind of hard for me to say no. The fan base is wrong for wanting Bernie at 2 as opposed to 3. So I understand. I'm going to get flack, and when people put out these rankings and top 5s or something, it's so hard because there were so many good players. How do you peg ahead of certain players? It's so hard. But I had to call Giroux because he's top 1 or 2 in every scoring category that the Philadelphia Flyers, have.
But that's the joy of being hockey fans, is we get to discuss and debate these things. There's no wrong answer. We're not saying anyone out there who believes differently is wrong. We're not saying you're wrong. This is what your experience and what you believe it to be, and that's a good discussion, and we love it. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Well, actually, I got no thoughts left, guys. We've hit overtime. Again, we should be 2 guys in overtime, man. It happens all the time. I just want to quickly mention to everyone, guys, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. live to all our streams. We got great guests like tonight, Jamey. Go ahead, go on, share. Make sure that you go over, follow their stuff that they're doing. They got some incredible stuff that you're doing. Check it out below. He's over on Twitter. You can follow all the stuff. They got camp going on. You're going to hear all the stuff. Go read their articles, what's happening. Man, you guys do a fabulous job. I wish I could keep you on for another hour.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm going to be honest. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the fans. The fans are phenomenal. And I mean that cold-heartedly. Not cold, absolutely heartedly. I'm going to be honest. The fans are amazing. They're absolutely. They have supported us from day one, and it's unbelievable. And you guys do a great job week in and week out. And of course, I'm going to smile. Just keep up the good work. And Pavel, I'm telling you, man, you did a great job, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You guys are too knowledgeable.
Me and me only.
I like coming on because of how much knowledge you guys have, and you know what I'm talking about. You don't get that, very often to know, the history about players and stuff like. It's kind of
so exciting. Yeah, man, it's been great. Any last thought that you have, man?
For me?
For you, Jamey. Yeah, any last thought?
Last thought, I think the Flyers are going to finish, 6th worst team in the NHL.
Ooh. And everybody's prediction, I'm going to say to make the playoffs, and Owen Tippett has a big season.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out to Flyers way. I think even though it's going to be a hard year, even though they're not technically tanking, I think you're looking at either one of Bedard or Mishkov. And guys, if you get either one of those, it's going to be a beautiful time in the years ahead.
Yes. All it takes is one, right?
That's fun.
One generational talent. That's it.
Thanks so much, man. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. You hope you have a great season. We wish you all the best and all the work that you're doing. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks a lot. You guys are awesome. Take care.
All right, guys. In the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe.
Oh, by the way, make sure, guys, that you keep your heads up.